Today on The Necessary Entrepreneur, we welcome Radha Agrawal, social entrepreneur, community architect, public speaker, and author. Radha is CEO and co-founder of Daybreaker, an early morning dance movement in 26 cities around the world with over 500,000 multi-generational community members. Daybreaker's goal is to reinvent the morning while designing and defining a new culture that's 5 a.m. to 9 a.m. instead of traditional 9 to 5 p.m. Daybreaker celebrated its 10th anniversary last year and is currently on its peace tour using the power of dance and joy to unite communities, and the upcoming Purple Tour, which will bring people of all political persuasions together as the election approaches. Daybreaker is also proud to introduce the Belong Center, a nonprofit initiative aiming to further the mission of fostering community and wellness, expanding the reach and impact of Daybreaker's ethos. In this episode, Radha and I talk about the pandemic of loneliness, resetting success metrics in our brains, meaningful relationships, composting problems, and having experiences over luxuries. Radha also talks about her book Belong and digs into the updated definition and the cardinal direction of belonging. I hope you find this conversation as insightful as I do. Would you be so kind to like, subscribe, and comment below, and we'll continue bringing you great conversations with great people. Welcome back to The Necessary Entrepreneur today. It's a special day, and we want to welcome Radha Agrawal. What a cool name.
It's Radha.
See, I knew it. See, I was going to do it wrong, Radha. I just did that so you could actually go ahead and correct me, because many of corrections are going to come over the next 45 minutes. I'm excited personally for having you on today. I find myself in that position so often, having these conversations. We used to call them podcasts. Now it's just sit downs. Maybe we're becoming more Larry King-ish and some of those people that had conversations, but you're a special human. And so we're fortunate enough to be able to sit and talk to you today. There's these things. You're a social entrepreneur. You're a community architect. You're a public speaker. You're an author. You're an entrepreneur. You're somebody who came up with dance movements, and you have a new passion behind Belong in this idea about a pandemic of loneliness. How in the world could you fit all these things plus more that I just described that one human can be given as these these titles? But I want to share one more thing here. Someone gave you a review, and it was John Mackey, who was a co-founder of Whole Foods, that said, "You're a force of nature. Her talks are energetic, inspiring, generative, and I can't wait to hear her speak again at our next CEO Summit." People are saying those things about you. We are honored to speak with you for a few minutes today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So you have some neat things happening recently. You wrote a book back in 2018. I think the title of the book was Belong. And what we talked a little bit before we jumped on here was you have this purpose and passion that are showing up in your life about there's a pandemic of loneliness. How have you realized this? How have you come to understand it? What's that mean?
Yeah, I think we all start with ourselves. And for me, when I turned 30 years old, I realized I didn't belong. And, that led me on its path of really trying to understand kind of who I am, what I care about, the type of community I've spent my time with, and how we've stumbled into these communities and friend groups that don't always align with who we are, what our values are. And they end up making us feel worse than better, right? They end up talking smack about each other. You don't feel safe with each other. There's a competitiveness with one another. And so for me, when I was turning 30, my twin sister and I were throwing a birthday party. And I remember, everyone was invited to my birthday party, but wasn't someone that I fully felt safe with, And I sort of looked myself in the mirror and I was like, wow, my whole life growing up, I grew up in a family where, Indian and Japanese households, Japanese Indian communities, was very connected to community and belonging. Of course, I've had moments of loneliness then too growing up, but that how could I end up at 30 and had prioritized what everyone told me to prioritize, my career and my romantic relationships first over everything else, rather than my friendships and my communities. And I did that really well. I was an investment banker out of college. I was focused on this partnership that I was in, this love romantic relationship, but I really didn't feel connected to the community that I was in. And so I think all of us in America have the same problem, right? We are following the American dream of that, white picket fence and that family, nuclear family, and, sort of getting that career, to that 9-figure business and whatever, right? And so, and yet when you reach the pinnacle, that mountaintop of I've done it, I've reached it, you have no one to celebrate it with. You have no community with whom you can high five, right? With when you reach that pinnacle. So that for me was an early realization that, wow, I have spent my whole 20s prioritizing all the wrong things. So let me spend my 30s and 40s really focusing on the things that matter most. And this is our relationships, our meaningful relationships and communities, our friendships. And so at 30 is when I really began this really kind of excavation of who am I today? And by the way, that changes. I don't know how old you are, Mark, but
45.
guessing 45. Okay. So, at this point in your life, what are you caring about? What do you value? Maybe your children, families, family value, education, kind of those things matter more to you than partying or than, whatever, just whatever it is. Right. And so at every phase of life, we shift our values, we shift who we are, but yet we don't really ever do that work. I mean, I'm going to ask you, have you done this work for yourself? Have you written down the qualities you're looking for in a friend at 45?
I think that I'm fortunate enough to be on this journey of entrepreneurship. And I agree with you in our 20s. So the quick answer is I never want to say I've achieved specifically what you're asking. I'm not at the finish line anywhere because I think I'm a constant evolution of being a better form of myself all the time. Like that's how I think about this. But relationships are really important.
Yeah.
And people are important.
That's right.
And I think how I show up in the people's lives, that whether I'm their leader, whether I influence them, whether I'm a friend, whether it's a significant other, the way I show up in people's lives, it's important. And
yeah,
I think it's serious. We got to take it serious, but it can be fun and relaxing at the same time. But no, but relationships are important.
Yeah, and I think that again, because we're living in this kind of toxic individualistic society where all the industrial forces are pushing us towards loneliness and separation. So education system with competition and testing, right? Healthcare system, which is sort of like, individualize your healthcare rather than create group opportunities to be healthy, to, governments in general, just kind of every force around us is pushing us towards toxic individualism. Market, kind of the world of capital markets is pushing us that way as well. And so, I think we've really been living in this trance of toxic individualism. And I'm really focused now on moving us to a culture of belonging, moving into a culture of cooperation, of collaboration over competition, and community over kind of individualism. And I really feel like if every entrepreneur move in the direction of facing outward and how can we actually solve problems, not just to make money, but really also to serve our communities, we'd be a lot better off as a society and in our sense of belonging and our sense of connection to ourselves and our community around us.
Do you think this is a resetting of the success metric in our mind? I mean,
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that again, we have been fed this lie in many ways, this lie of if you work 100-hour work weeks, if you put your head down, if you cancel all your social plans, if you just go, go, go. By the way, I did that. I was an investment banker, as a hard charging entrepreneur. I did that. You will end up better off for it. Well, My twin sister ended up with a thyroid problem. I ended up with, just really, just a lot of cortisol, kind of painful, stressful moments in my life. And I woke up and I was like, wait, what is this all for? Who am I surrounding myself with? I can't, I can really just count on those that I deeply trust on one hand. And I really want to focus more on community and meaningful relationships. And so, yeah, that new success metric for me is twofold. One is community, meaningful community, and those with whom I can have deep, confiding type conversations with. And the second is experiences over luxuries, right? That we begin to value not just the Rolex watch on our hand, but that's really who gives a shit. It's part of the French. Like at the end of life, it's like, what are the experiences that you can co-create and be a part of with your community that loves you? And so those are the two pieces that I have deeply focused on. And P.S., my community have introduced me to and have purchased and have supported every business I've come up with and built from scratch. And when I sold, my twin sister and I sold our company for 9 figures, which I'm saying that as a proud Indian Japanese woman.
Successful entrepreneur, founder, right? Scaling, all these things. So,
well, I was able to actually take 50 of my friends on an all expenses paid vacation, right? And all the friends that were with me along the journey that showed up for me, I was able to say, hey, I'm gonna pay it back. Like we all won together. And I continue to do this every year since that happened. My sister and I take our friends out for our birthday, 50, 60, 70 friends every year on this all expense paid holiday. And I'm proud of that. Not to brag or not to boast, but it's like my measure of success is how I can share that with the community that I love and that I've felt deeply loves me back.
So a couple questions. Where was the first one? Was it like somewhere exotic like Bali or?
Yeah, we did Cartagena, Colombia.
Okay, I was going to say Costa Rica was next, but okay. All right.
Yeah, Costa Rica, I just came back from after 6 weeks, but yeah, Cartagena, Colombia. And then we did Mexico City at a hacienda. We did Marfa, Texas. We've done a bunch of really, really cool special
Not
places.
Marrakesh yet, right? There's some exotic places coming out here.
Yeah, maybe someday. But every year, somewhere that we can, easily bring 50 friends and they can get to. Yeah.
So I want to ask the tough questions. I don't even ask for people's approval because it's like, hey, if we've understood and you've really grown to have these beliefs and these truths for yourself, the pushback question about the success metric is this, though, that if you wouldn't have taken that approach in your 20s, would you have been able to have done this for all your people? Because they're not the ones doing it for you.
You got that. You got that right. Yeah. I mean, I think that actually it's a yes and, right? I do think that there is this really entitled kind of generation that's growing up right now. I can feel that in the workforce. It's really, really hard to find top-notch, dedicated, passionate team members who really kind of want to be in the trenches with you. There's a lot of like, what can you do for me versus like, let me prove to you. This idea of meritocracy, I feel like that I grew up, under in my 20s, exists much less today in this kind of more of an entitled workforce. It's been really hard to find great team members. Fortunately, on our Daybreaker team, we have an amazingly dedicated, hardworking team, and I feel lucky to have them on the team. But it's hard to find good people who, again, like I said, are not entitled. That's the first thing. The second thing is, there is this kind of what's the word, like adage or saying around it's not business, it's pleasure, or it's like don't take it personally. I think for me, the new concept that I kind of really build my world and my work around is that I take everything personally. That I take every single opportunity, team member, the way we partner with brand sponsors, any partner for Daybreaker, we look through a lens of who are they as human beings. Do they align with our values? They don't have to be politically aligned necessarily, obviously, but they have to be values aligned. And so those types of things matter to me,
Boy, that I tell you what, that statement about being values aligned and not being politically aligned, I appreciate growing up in the 80s and 90s as an adolescent and teenager when I don't remember us talking about politics.
Right.
Where we didn't evaluate someone's level of intelligence or like goodness in the world based upon their politics. Man, that what a moment to dream of again. And who knows, fingers crossed that maybe we can get back there because we're at a spot where I think there's so many great things about so many humans and we're just not allowing ourselves to see it.
Totally. We're compartmentalizing, kind of everyone's kind of all the parts of every single person into this one part where it's like, I might disagree with this one political piece, but I do agree with the way you raise your family. I agree with the way you align with your values and community. I with your service and all of that. And I think we just lump everyone into this one kind of piece. And I really kind of urge everyone to think of each person they interact with through the lens of parts. What part of them can you connect with? And we can see humanity in every single person, We're actually announcing this second half of the year, going into the elections, we're announcing with Daybreaker the Purple Tour, calling it the Purple Tour, because we really, at Daybreaker, we are bipartisan in the sense that we are pro-human, we are for everyone, and we just are pro-peace. And so bringing blue and red together and creating a purple tour that we're dancing for, pro-unity, dancing for community. That's really important to us. And so we're throwing these dance parties all across the nation, at the ballots, just like to get everyone to remember that, hey, even if we don't align our politics, let's align on dance and on music, on camaraderie and on community and on, and on wellness and really.
I think you're right on. I know one of the influencers out here today is a guy, Gary Vaynerchuk. He's in Hudson Yards. He's not too far away from me, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And he said, I think he's right about, hey, we're a more purple world here.
Yeah.
I believe so. There's 70 or 80% of us, especially in this country of 330 million. I think that really align and appreciate the uniqueness of individuals, that realize a bunch of us have a lot of good things to bring to the table. And I'm finding myself even growing and evolving, appreciating talking to people who have a different perspective on things.
Me too. Absolutely. Man, I love it. I love meeting people who are completely different.
Yep. And I had to evolve through that. I wasn't always that way, and so that's awesome. So is that your Daybreaker morning dance movements? Is that what that is you were talking about?
Yeah, it's a dance party. It's sober. Again, the idea is like it's substance free. It's in the morning when our circadian rhythms of our bodies are saying, hey, you're the most energetic when you wake up, not right before you go to bed. Like before I go to bed, I want to put a meditation in, listen to some just like relaxing jazz music and then go to sleep by 10 p.m. I don't want to be out to 2 o'clock in the morning anymore, or certainly I never did. And so the idea was like, can we actually invent a new moment in time where we can party and have fun and drink green juice instead of alcohol and really treat our temples, our bodies in ways that are good for us and connect with each other when we're the most energized, right after you get out of the bed. The thing about nightlife also is that, there's a kind of energetic sort of, disjointedness, right? Like some people maybe were yelled at by their boss, or some people are stressed from work, or they're different energy levels. So when you go into a space, I really feel the energetics in a space. So I'll just feel like it's totally like dysregulated. Whereas in the morning, everyone came from the same place, their bed, right? So the purity of the energy in the room is just so juicy and so optimistic and so like clean slate. That it's a great time to meet new friends. And so that's why our movement took off. It's like it started out as a, this experiment, this kind of this idea, would people be willing to dance in the morning sober, on a weekday before going to work? Now we're doing weekends and 10 a.m. starts because I'm a mom now and I'm less of a hardo, but we're doing like 10 a.m. Saturdays, 10 a.m. Sundays. So it feels like a replacement to church in a way. It's like this replacement to, it's like, hey, if you if you want to just get together, dance, be in community, eat, good, yummy things. If you want to just like be in relationship, bring your kids, bring the whole family. We have generations that come to Daybreaker because it's a sober dance party. So anyone can come. So we have dozens and dozens of kids at every one of our events. We've had great grandmas. Jane Goodall has been a Daybreaker event, so it's across the board. Right. And so the idea is like, let's bring that community dance hall back together. Let's bring that sense of, belonging and connection back to a celebratory environment. So it's not just, let's talk about our feelings. Let's like talk about loneliness. Like, let's actually do something and make it fun and add a party element to it. And that's what Daybreaker is. And that's why I took off, I think, all over the world.
Sounds like maybe better therapy than always focusing on our problems.
You got it. It's literally that. It's like, instead of just talking about our problems, let's actually alchemize them on the dance floor. Let's compost them together. Let's see someone in front of us having the best time and recognize, God, we're all going to die. Let's just let me just live into that world. Let me just compost my problems and find new ways to be optimistic. And the dance floor is such an amazing place to heal trauma. It's actually scientifically proven that when you move your body, you can actually alchemize any kind of sadness and trauma. And the mirror neurons that you face seeing other people enjoying themselves gives you permission to enjoy yourself as well. It's a very healing, very celebratory technology, I call it,
The if we go back to 2018, I'm sure your book's on Amazon. Don't know if it's on Audible.
Yeah, it is. I narrated on Audible.
Did you? Okay, that's awesome. Right. And so if we went back and read that in 2018, do the things in Belong still stand today, or has that evolved in 6 years since?
It's a great question. It's funny. I'm giving a keynote at South by Southwest this Friday.
Awesome.
And I've been
down in Austin. Yep.
Yeah, in Austin. Yep. And I've been really working on this talk for months now because a lot has shifted since 2018. So I wrote this book. My definition for belonging was, and still rings true. It's sort of this exhale of I'm home. It's a place where I'd rather be here than anywhere else. It's a feeling of deep acceptance and relatedness. And with all that's happened in the last 6 years, with so much polarizations, all these wars, all this research I've done in the last 6 years, I have an updated definition for belonging now, which includes what I call the cardinal directions of belonging. And it's basically, imagine a compass. You're hearing it here first. Actually, I'm just sharing it here for the very first time. I'm going to share it on stage on Friday. I'm sure this will come out after the talk, so I'm happy to share that here.
In a couple of weeks, and we'll tag South by Southwest.
Great, yeah, beautiful. So I call this the cardinal directions of belonging. And you are your vessel is your body is the compass, and there's the north, the south, the east behind you, and the west in front of you. So the north is your spiritual well-being. It's your soul practice. And I feel like in America, with a declining, 10% decline year over year of religiosity, we are less and less people are going to church. We are literally starved for sort of this connection to spirit. And I'm not talking about God connection necessarily, like whether you have a spiritual practice or not. It's not just to a specific God that's specifically focused on a specific religion, but it's just a sense that there's this bigger spirit around us. And once we kind of connect to this spiritual realm or kind of soul practice, call it meditation, call it just this greater being above you, actually it reduces your stress. Your parietal lobe in your brain says, I am not alone. I am in deep connection with something that's greater than myself. I am one. I'm feeling a sense of oneness with everyone around me. That takes you away from loneliness. So I really do believe that we are having this sort of soul practice health crisis. Spiritual health is declining, which makes us feel lonely. The other piece of it, I call it the southern lens of this cardinal directions of belonging, is your connection to the planet. And that we have totally divorced ourselves from where our food came from, our connection to Mother Earth, and how we really see this, our relationship, we are literally but elements of the planet. We are made of carbon and oxygen, and our bodies are water. And yet we have completely forgotten this deep connection to the energetic connection to the planet. And that's why we feel lonely as well, And so how do we connect? How do we earth? How do we walk in the woods? How do we walk in the forest and remember this sense of belonging that we have to the planet? That's, I call, the southern cardinal direction of belonging. The east, which is behind you where the sun rises, is your ancestors. You asked me earlier where I'm from. My mother's from Japan, my father's from India. You're from Cincinnati, Ohio. I'm sure, ancestors are from, I don't know, where.
Came from probably Europe, different parts of Europe. Yeah,
Right.
some German. There's honestly a little bit of American Indian. I mean, we're a melting pot here.
Okay,
But yeah,
beautiful. But when
yeah.
you close your eyes and you think about your parents, your grandparents, your great grandparents, like 2 parents, 4 grandparents, 8 great grandparents, 16 great grandparents, like all the way to literally 10 generations is 2,064 humans that it took to get to you. 10 generations literally is 2,064 humans that it took to get to you. And yet, in this melting pot of America where we live, we have forgotten our lineage. We have forgotten where we came from. And it doesn't mean that we have separate, like, it doesn't mean that, oh, you're Catholic, I'm Protestant, I'm this. And I'm talking about the values that we're bringing forward from our lineage. We have forgotten these family values, all of the wisdom of our lineage. And so I just feel like, when in the research I've done around ancestry and your lineage, our sense of loneliness comes from us feeling like we're on an island without this recognition that we have thousands of generations behind us, right? We're so lonely from that. And then lastly, the West in front of us, where we're going, right? The sun sets in the West. It brings spirit, the planet, and our lineage all together into this direction of service. And again, 90% of Americans do not volunteer. 90% of Americans do not give $1 to charities. Only 10% of Americans serve as on a volunteer basis. I mean, that is a tragedy. It used to be 100% of Americans used to donate and volunteer their time and money. 10% of your salary went to charity organizations, no matter what. You just felt a part of, right? And it's in this toxically individualistic, kind of me centric society that is sort of, we've forgotten our service, where we're going. And that's why we're so lonely. And so I really believe, and in all this research I've done, that actually service makes you feel more connected, more happy, more successful in the way who you are as a being. There's so much juice that comes with service. So the North, the spirit, the South, the planet, the East, your ancestors, your lineage, and the West, your service. If you connect to each of these cardinal directions of belonging, then all of a sudden you'll never feel lonely again.
Said first here.
Said first here.
So we talked about values, not religions, all the religions of the world. We talked about values. Of all the different ways for governments to operate around the world, too, democracies, authoritarian. I mean, there's just so much turmoil around the world. And it's almost like there always is. What are we missing about shared values of humans? Not just to regurgitate what you just said, but do you think, how if there's a war, somebody tried to impose something on someone else, our belief system, the way that we should do it. And culturally, there's these things that have been embedded in these cultures and countries forever. Do you think there's a shared value that everyone should share? Because it's not popular to say that we should impose our democratic system on people.
No, I mean, I feel like, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you could do for your country, right? Like that was just a few generations ago where that was the philosophy of our nation. It was just, what can you do for your country, not what your country can do for you? How can we serve? And in just a few generations, it became, what can you do for me? What have you done for me lately? I'm angry with you because you haven't done X. I really believe we are in a crisis of consciousness right now around the self. And there's 2 ways to go, right? There's the way to go, which is the VR headset where I'm really alone together, right? Or there's this more communal, more connected, more sort of, we are at the top of the food chain as a human species because we are the best at collaboration, right? We are not the strongest. We are not the fastest, right? Cheetahs and bears are stronger and faster than humans. We are the best at collaborating. We're best at learning from each other. We're best at passing on knowledge generation to generation. That's what makes us the top of the food chain. And yet we are also in dominion over the planet, over animals, over the ecosystem. We are not in right relationship with the planet, with our ecosystem. We are literally in dominion. So I think step one, what I would want the governments to do, and if I really, could speak to the Vivek Murthys of the world and the presidents of the world, I would just say, let's first recognize our place. Let's find the right relationship with the ecosystem, with where we are in the planet. And from that place, what does it look like to contribute? It doesn't have to be, sort of this massive tax. It could be like, how can we actually make it a way of life? I had this idea of like, tomorrow's my day of service was a kind of a hashtag. It's like, hey, Mark, want to get together? No, Radha, I can't because tomorrow's my day of service. I'd love to, but tomorrow it's my day to go to the YMCA. It's my day to go to the Boys and Girls Club. It's my day to go to the local gym. It's my day to go somewhere. But tomorrow's my day of service. So it's like, oh, cool, got you. All right, great. I'll see you next week. Or like, let's find another date. But it's like this like given idea that tomorrow's my day of service, and I can't. So it's like
every day.
What's that?
Every day, right?
Every day. If we can have tomorrow being my day of service. No, and it doesn't be every day. It could be like, this week, this month, this
whatever
quarter,
the moment is, right? Whatever the moment is.
But it's like tomorrow's my day of service, and we normalized that behavior and made it cool, made it relevant, made it what all the celebrities, all the influencers, all the billionaires, like, doesn't matter, where you came from. You did that as like just a feel good. Because by the way, it also makes you feel great.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. That's what I was going to say. And I'm interrupting because I'm like, man, this is my idea is it's not that driving my Mercedes or my BMW is a special thing. It's that when you drive it to go help somebody else in their life. Yeah. So here's the thing. I'm not giving up my cool car.
Totally.
See, I think that's how we can mix it in here. I'm not going to give up. Yeah, we can do it all. And I think, and that's how we have to mix this in to say, hey, Mark and Radha and all these people, we haven't achieved success and then saying, hey, wait a minute, we're going to be elitist. Like we figured it out. Like let us live here, but not you. But it's like, hey, you can achieve so much. I think that's a shared message. If I reflect back on my life, the moments that I stopped to help someone else, I have this saying that, hey, I'm all about giving a hand up, not a hand out. And that hand up consistently will help people change their lives and realize that they can go out here in the world and do the same thing for folks. I don't think I'm the only one that can say it. I think everyone can. When you're helping others do things, whether it's the underserved, whether it's someone that's homeless, whether it's someone else that just needs a pick-me-up that day, or maybe in line with this, this pandemic of loneliness, it feels great to help people.
Totally. My dear friend, Michael Clark, he started this nonprofit called Change Reaction. And basically, he gives away tens of millions of dollars every single year through his nonprofit to not those who are taking governmental aid, but just those just above, working class citizens who had their car break down, but they don't have enough money, but they're hardworking, 3-job, single parent, humans who can't make this. Their car broke down. It's a $500 car payment. They can't make that payment, and Change Reaction will pay that $500 for them. And they give away like tens of thousands of scholarships every single year to these working class, hardworking American citizens down on their luck, maybe immigrants, just come to this country immigrants who just got sick. Their daughter got sick, can't make a medical payment. Something happened, their fridge broke. Something happened. They just can't make ends meet. And they can't get out of that cycle of debt. Change Reaction will do that for them. Our nonprofit Belong Center, we're launching these circle programs, to serve anyone who's feeling lonely to come in and actually speak to what their struggles are so that we can actually support not just There's everyday Americans, everyday citizens who are in that sort of framework of loneliness and feel like they can't get out. They're, depression and anxiety, 90% of depression and anxiety cases are a result of loneliness, right? And it's hard to get out and give, you ask for a hand up, hand out, like that idea, like it's hard to get a hand up even, or even ask for a hand up when you're in this lonely, depressed, anxious state. So like step one is let's solve that issue and then get into solving all the other issues that we face. But I really believe that loneliness is the underlying foundational issue that's plaguing every single area of our country, from gun violence to political polarization to, the opioid epidemic, to the obesity epidemic. I mean, literally every single one of them ladder down to, I don't belong, therefore I will bring a gun to school. I don't belong, therefore I will overeat. I don't belong, therefore I will, be violent with my wife or my family or my whomever, right? So I don't belong, therefore I will be politically polarized and not listen to the person next to me. So all of it, if we solve for this, Mark, I really believe we can solve every issue we face as a species.
So you think it's that big? Where did this come from? When you wrote the book, Belong, what triggered this? I mean, a lot of it comes from our own journeys, loneliness ourselves, but did it come from internal and personal experiences, or did you look around your community? And it seems like this has almost been a decade of problem solving for you, going deep and trying to unlock this thing. That's my take from us just meeting today.
Totally. I mean, it's a lifelong quest, being half Japanese, half Indian, growing up in French Canada.
Yeah. Where'd you fit in, right?
Yeah. And it's like, where do I belong? Where, it's like, I don't really belong anywhere, but I belong everywhere. And I've always had this idea that our separation comes from the stories we tell ourselves. I mean, I really believe, if, and it's so controversial to say this, but it's like, if warring Middle Eastern countries didn't see each other through the lens of the stories that they have with each other, but just saw the humanity of all of it. And it was just like, you're a human, I'm a human, where can we connect here? I really believe we can solve every war, right? Because like all wars are stories around, this is my border, this is your border. I've placed meaning that this border exists in the first place. I've placed meaning that there's this political party and there's this political party. Like we are meaning making machines as human beings. And so when you zoom out as someone who doesn't belong anywhere, I really began to see, wow, like we have just placed so many stories around, oh, I'm a thoroughbred, Indian, I'm a thoroughbred Japanese, therefore I need to perpetuate these stories. And yet when you don't belong anywhere, you're like, oh, well, I just see you as a human. Why are we placing these stories that actually create separation and not create connection? And that's been my stance, since the beginning. And I really believe the same to be true of our political parties. It's like, we've placed meaning on these political parties. We've placed stories around these political parties. We just remove them. We're like, okay, what is it? Well, all right, well, fiscally, I don't believe in this. Okay, let's talk about it. All right, that's affecting my family in the way I bring home dollars to feed my family. Great, let's talk about it. Or we place meaning around the healthcare system. Okay, and whether healthcare should be free or paid. Like, great, does it have to do with the meaning I placed on red or blue? No, it has to do with what I'm taking home to my family and how it's going to serve and support my family. And so that's what I feel like is so funny about just humans. It's like, what are the stories that we're placing meaning on it, and what stories are separating us and what stories are connecting us?
Yeah. I mean, this is so important. I appreciate when I sit and have a conversation with someone. It feels good when you talk to someone that's refreshing, that it's like, oh, finally someone that's expressing some of the things that exist in my mind. These are stories about the folks that I get to talk to, but it is refreshing. And I think if people will just slow down on the things that we've been taught.
Yes.
And right. And you said the stories we've been told. It's the things we've been taught, because what I consistently say is that I was raised Christian here in the Midwest. I don't go to church anymore. Like, I'll share these things. I don't worry about being controversial, because if anybody says I'm controversial about anything, it's like I'm so in the middle of so many things, registered independent, all these things, because I just can't identify with all these idealistic things that are happening around the world. And when I took a step back from all the idealism, you're like, there's a lot of good things about a lot of good people that have reprimanded themselves into all these spaces, these corners. And so, but I think that if I would have been born in 1979, where I was born in the Midwest of the United States, if I would have been born in a country that was Muslim, I would have probably been Muslim.
Right, because those are stories. Those are stories that you've been told, and these are stories that you believe in. This is a story that attaches identity. It attaches, self-worth, familial ties, ancestral ties. Like, all of it is so tied to the stories that we're taught.
And I just don't know. And the same thing, if I would have been raised in a Jewish family, born into a Jew, I'd be Jewish.
You got it.
Yeah. And so I don't know. I'm still figuring out where to place all these things, because everybody we have to say culture matters and all these things matter. But it's like, I think you're onto something, probably way in advance of where my brain is. And there's going to be folks that listen to this and be like, yeah, Mark, we're beyond you. We're more in line with her. But I think it's this idea of there's just something special about being a human if we can take a step back.
That's right.
And just like, man, if I can wake up every day and find this balance between selfishness and selflessness, if I can find this balance, and we're going to have some of it, there's a lot of selfish things that I do. But if I can be aware that there's folks around me that if I just wake up and I'm present in their lives, and to try to just make a little bit of an impact today, whether it's slowing down to have a small conversation, if it's just slowing down to listen to them and let them be heard, and maybe this loneliness and this trek that you're on about discussing it, maybe it can be eliminated, because I do believe that I see a lack of confidence. I see a lack of self-esteem. I see a lack of belief in what people are capable of. I think we have self-limiting beliefs on so many levels.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think this is an awesome story and an awesome path that you're on. Hey, what'd you learn in 2020 for being on this tour with, I don't know what the tour was called, but it was with Oprah?
Yeah. We toured with her. We did a 9-stadium tour. In 2020, literally, it was wild going from 15,000 person sold out stadiums to literally a week after the tour ended, COVID-19. And so it was just like, the Aladdin with the lamp. It's like big universe to like itty bitty living space. Like, that was kind of what that experience was like. But it was, a moment I'll never forget. I'll say that it was, she's the real deal. Like, there's a reason why she's, her team has been with her for 25 years plus. Like, everyone that I met has been with her for 25 years plus. And, entrepreneur, what a big deal that is. If nothing else, that the loyalty exists when leadership is good and fair and kind and benevolent. And so I really was inspired by the length of time that every single person I met has been with her for, and that for me is a marker of great leadership. I also, I just feel like playing at such a huge, in such a huge stage was for us. Again, you talk about limiting belief. It's like, you're like, oh, wow. Okay, cool. Like, we can do anything. I mean, if you set your mind to something, let's go and change the world. Let's go end loneliness. I really feel like that was that real beginning of like, wow, if we can be on this stage here, then we can be in service of connecting to some of the largest issues of our time,
All right. So we have a couple more minutes here. What I know about people that become successful enough to have any level of significant wealth, what I know is that they find themselves consistent. We mentioned Oprah. We saw her in The Rock. It was controversial, but when the fires happened in Hawaii, they raised that fund. And it's weird what goes viral. It's like they could donate $10 million to something or $20 million and it's not enough. It's just really weird, some of these dynamics that happen. But there's a lot of people that feel called to go out and make a difference in their community when they become significantly wealthy. You're doing it for the folks around you.
Yep.
I'm sure there's so many other ways you're doing it. but they wouldn't give it up to go back to not being wealthy. There's a story, Nikola Tesla, he's one of the only people that kind of did. I mean, there's some of these people who did. Mark Twain died poor, but so we're not willing to give up the wealth. So we're not willing to not go down this path of success. When we started this conversation, you talked about what you define success in your 20s, and you were an investment banker and you built all this wealth. And what I know is the person that you've become through that is now able to show up and be a leader and influence these people's lives that are doing this with you. How would you go back then and tell the 22 or 24 or 25-year-old to do it while still also chasing success?
Yeah. I mean, first I would say to myself, Rada, you're not alone. You are working your butt off, but you always have this connection to spirit. Build a practice of connection to spirit, to the planet, to your ancestors, and to your service along the way. I really believe that if I did that, I wouldn't feel as alone on this island of building my empire, quote unquote. And I would feel even more satisfaction and way less loneliness in the process of building towards that. And I say loneliness, but it's like a lonely path, right? Entrepreneurship. You're just slogging away. But if you had a morning spiritual practice, you had a practice of earthing or just walking in the forest, you had a moment of just like remembering your ancestors and what it took to get to here, and like that you're building this social enterprise, on the backs and on the shoulders of thousands and thousands and thousands of kind of ancestors that have given you this opportunity to be here today. I think I'd have just a lot more joy in the process. I think so much of the experience can feel painful and hard. And I mean, literally, I don't know a single entrepreneur who have made it to 9 figures that didn't have huge depression, anxiety, thyroid issues, health issues, stress issues, loss of just family, friendship, community in the process. And if you want to sacrifice your life, there is a way to do that and still create a practice that might take 30 minutes every day to do this practice, but it'll make you feel a whole lot better, and you won't lose your hair and your community and your kind of your marbles in the process.
Yeah, kudos, because I think because we need you all to build your empires.
Yep, that's right.
We need the entrepreneurs to do this.
That's
and
right.
So kudos. So what's your call to action as we jump off of here? So you just shared that. What's the call to action for everyone to engage with you going forward for the rest of 2024? We'll tag the socials. We'll tag the websites. What's your call to action on what you know about the world?
My call to action is to really be an agent for belonging, to walk into any space and make it better. Don't just look for things to point out that's bad about it or complain, right? You walk into a coffee shop, a restaurant, a friend's event, a birthday party, a family dinner, whatever, and you're like looking for things to get frustrated about. If you walk into a place and space and serve it with community and belonging as your lens, you'll never be unhappy. B, you'll always feel a sense of belonging. And C, you'll always be asked to come back, because someone who busses the dishes and brings more magic to any experience that you're part of will always have friends, and B, will always be invited back. So that's my call to action.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for being you and showing up. I think there is no doubt in talking to you, you're making us better. You're gonna make the world better. I'm excited about the next 2 or 3 years to follow you and really see the impacts you continue to make, because I think you're spot on with this pandemic of loneliness. So
I'm gonna leave you with one quote, just from what you said earlier. It's by E. Cummings, and this is on the bottom of every one of my emails. And she says, "I arise in the morning torn between a desire to improve the world and a desire to enjoy the world. This makes it hard to plan my day."
You're the best. Thank you.
All right. Have a good one. Thanks, Mark.